Hi, thank you for joining us. This is our Critical Spaces project for the University of Missouri Education Department. Our topic today is banned books, censorship in Missouri schools. My name's Adria Boudouris.
I'm Katie May.
I'm Aimee Weber.
And I'm Zach Lovelace.
On our agenda today is why has there been a recent escalation of book banning in schools? What has this looked like in Missouri school districts? What do key stakeholders think? And then we're going to talk about the debrief and next steps. We're talking about nationwide to statewide to district-wide and then on the individual level.
Before we can understand why there's been a recent escalation of book banning, we have to first look at the history of it. So book bans have occurred throughout U.S. history, from Uncle Tom's Cabin during the Civil War era to comic books during World War II. There was a drastic increase in the number of book bans in the 1980s due to the rise of conservatism. And these bans are based on fears of schools being anti-Christian, weakening patriotism, and teaching about historic racism, sexual orientation, and alternative family models. One of these book bans led to our current Supreme Court opinion on book bans. So the Supreme Court decision is Island Trees Union's Free School District versus PICO, and it took place in 1982. So what happened was the district school board banned certain books from schools' libraries because they were, quote, anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and just plain filthy. So the students in the district claimed this violated their First Amendment right to freedom of speech, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the students, stating that school boards cannot ban books just because they disagree with their content. This was not a clear decision, though. There was some unclear word choice and some dissension, and due to this, there's a loophole where school boards can ban books based on the justification of educational appropriateness or pornographic materials. So when this language is used to bypass bans being legally based on personal political views, and instead if a book is appropriate or pornographic, which is just the modern day version of vulgar. And then we have kind of a chart here that's going to show the history of book bans, just with some books that kind of are well known today. We see Catch-22, The Grapes of Wrath, The Great Gatsby was banned at one point, Lord of the Flies, and then more recently in 2006, To Kill a Mockingbird. So this moves us on to the question of what books are being banned in the US today. So the types of books being banned are mostly fiction, 75%, and then they are mostly young adult, 49% being young adult books. And then we have a list here of the most banned book titles. I just want to go through the top 5, and that way you can kind of look at why they're banned versus what compared to what the book is actually about. And there's kind of a distinction there. And you're going to see a lot of similarities between the books. So the first one, Genderqueer, is an autobiographical comic about Maya's journey to coming out as non-binary. This is banned on the justification of there being illustrations with sexual content. All Boys Aren't Blue is a memoir about what it is like for the author to grow up in a gay black man. It was banned based on the justification of there being LGBTQ plus content and for being sexually explicit. Out of the Darkness is a historic fiction novel about two teenagers, one a Mexican-American girl and the other an African-American boy who fall in love in 1937 Texas. It was banned based on the justification of it depicting abuse and being sexually explicit. The Bluest Eye is a fictional novel about an African-American girl who grows up following the Great Depression and believes she is ugly because she doesn't have light skin or blue eyes. It was banned based on the justification of it being sexually explicit, using graphic language, and having an underlying socialist communist agenda. The Hate You Give is a fictional novel about an African-American girl who struggles to move between the two worlds of the poor neighborhood she lives in and the fancy prep school she attends in the wake of the police shooting of her childhood best friend. It was banned based on the justification of it being anti-police and using profanity. So as you can see, there's kind of a difference about what the book is maybe banned about, and then how a lot of them share common themes. And we're going to continue this with the next graphic about the subject matter of the banned content. So 41% of banned books in America have LGBTQ plus themes, protagonist or predominant second characters. 40% have protagonists or prominent secondary characters of color. 22% have sexual content. 21% have titles with issues of race and racism. 10% have titles with themes of rights and activism. 9% are biography, autobiography, or memoir, and then 4% have stories with religious minorities. So we kind of see a disparity here with how a lot of these books are banned based on having sexual content, but only 22% are actually banned on that. And then of the books, 41% in reality have a LGBTQ plus themes or protagonist of color. So there's kind of that underlying theme you kind of see. Okay, perfect. And then how is this different than past book bans? So kind of in 3 different ways. The first is that it's at a greater frequency. You can see in this graph in the top left corner, the number of proposed book bans by the US by year has drastically gone up in 2022. It doubled from the previous year, and then from the years before that, it's can be seen to quadruple. So the second thing is that there's different tactics. So until recently, most book ban challenges were local and spontaneous by individual parents, but now it's organized groups that have been rapidly springing up at both the local and national level. So these groups are made up of community members both with and without children in public school, and they range from local Facebook groups to national level organizations. Many of the groups have mission statements about parents' rights, religious or conservative views, the exclusion of materials that have racial, LGBT plus themes. And sometimes they explicitly use the term critical race theory, which is like a common term. And then what tactics are used? So they use online harassment, filing criminal complaints against librarians and educators, circulation of common lists of books to target, and then mobilization to dominate discussion at public board meetings. And then the third way that these are kind of different is that it happens at different venues. So outside of these organizations, book bans have become politicized with both state lawmakers and executive branch members pushing for bans and educational gag orders that prohibit any discussion of divisive topics. So it's moved out of just local communities and school boards into actual government buildings. So this has rose out of a combination of political movements during the COVID-19 pandemic, such as fights about mask mandates and virtual school, as well as controversies surrounding that same critical race theory controversy. We kind of have a quote here from the chief executive of content for one of the country's largest providers of books. So they say that the politicization of the topic is what's different than what I've seen in the past. It's being driven by legislation. It's being driven by politicians aligning with one side or the other. And in the end, the librarian, teacher, educator is getting caught in the middle. Awesome. Thank you.
When we look at Missouri, the situation isn't much better in terms of book bans. PEN America does a lot of research on censorship and these book bans. The graphic on the left shows you the top 5 states that have book bans and the amount of books banned. Florida obviously stands out with 1,400, but Missouri is right there in third with a little over 300. And PEN America writes that nearly 300 books have been banned in over 11 school districts just since August of 2022. And that's over 20 authors and illustrators, including what are considered prize winners and bestsellers. So these aren't just random one-off books that are getting banned. These are books that have been cited as some of the best literature around. And then Jay Ashcroft in the Missouri Capitol has been tying book funding to book selection, a move he's trying to save government dollars and says is in a reasonable string, but it has library specialists worried. There have been numerous accounts of librarians being worried about which books they're going to put out because they're worried that they're going to receive less funding because they don't fit Ashcroft's mold of what he wants to see in libraries. Ashcroft's even gone as far to label this as something that he can do with an executive decision to make it move along faster and cut those dollars rather than going through the Capitol building and getting legislation passed. But our main culprit of these book bans in Missouri is Wentzville School District. We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but in 2022, the school district was sued by the American Civil Liberties Union for the banning of several books that are, quote, are by and about communities of color, LGBTQ people, and other marginalized groups. The ACLU said that this was an unconstitutional banning. And so a case was filed in March of 2022. The plaintiffs moved, that would be the American Civil Liberties Union, for a preliminary injunction requiring the reinstatement of the banned books and prohibiting Wentzville R4 from entertaining additional or temporary or permanent bans. This case has still not been closed, but as we can see, the direction continues to move and that there's going to be more bans in the future and that this isn't going to stop anytime soon and that the school districts are going to continue to have to fight against these school bans if they're going to see any form of movement.
To take a closer look at the Wentzville School District and the justification behind their book banning decisions, we'll look at the details of the banning of the previously mentioned novel, The Bluest Eye. In January of 2022, in a decision of 4-3, the Wentzville School District took the book off of their library shelves. As previously discussed, this book discusses ideas of race and beauty while the reader experiences life through the eyes of the narrator. The novel does include the difficulties that she lives through, including abuse in the form of rape and incest. The board first called for the book to be moved to a restricted list for AP readers with parent consent. However, this motion failed 3-4, and instead the motion not to retain the book passed. While we look at the district decisions, we turn to some of the board members' personal views and the justification behind why they passed this decision. One of these board members in favor of banning the book was Sandy Garber, who spoke to news sources about the board's decision. According to a local news source, KSCK, Garber stated in the meeting that The Bluest Eye had no academic value. In a quote from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Garber said, "By all means, go and buy the book for your child, but I would not want this book for anyone else to see." Like many board member candidates, Garber released a document explaining her beliefs and goals for the district in 2018. Amongst other things, her document called for no critical race theory in teacher professional development or in classroom curriculum. It advocated for PragerU sources, which she stated teaches a history that I don't believe we are teaching in classrooms of today. Garber's term ended in 2022, and she no longer serves on the WSD school board. While she is no longer serving in this role, the influence of these votes continue in the district today. To begin gathering perspectives of key stakeholders in this issue, we reached out to local librarians as well as researched librarian responses that we have seen within the district. We'll take a look at these experiences as we go along. First, we found an article about a Wentzville librarian and her experience with the strong reactions and pointed fingers from parents and community members in the district. This librarian had been in the field of Wentzville School District for many years and was accused of providing pornography to minors in the school library. The accusation came from parents in the district and led to an investigative police visit at the school. The librarian, who preferred to remain anonymous, meticulously searched the libraries for materials that may be targeted by the new Missouri legislation. The legislation was a Senate bill number 775 and was passed in August of 2022. It called for the complete ban of books with sexually explicit material. Due to this decision, books including history about the Holocaust, Shakespeare adaptations, and art by Van Gogh were pulled from shelves. The librarian was overwhelmed with the task of deciding which books would fall under this new legislation. She was overwhelmed by accusations from the community members and the restrictions placed on her role as a librarian. She left the field at the end of the 2023 school year. A key quote that we pulled from this article, which was written by Coda Story, states, "The entire process felt so wrong, like I was being used for something I did not support, but she felt that she had no other option." To learn more about these experiences of WSD librarians, we interviewed someone who has been working in the district since 2021. She has preferred to also keep her perspectives and responses anonymous. Since the book challenges have been proposed, she has been more cautious of her book recommendations and feels the need to make disclaimers before making a suggestion. New procedures have taken place within the library, such as more careful purchasing of books. She explained that books are no longer purchased without multiple reviews from various sites. In addition, she has personally stopped ordering as many adult audience novels. In terms of the reactions from students and teachers, we asked her about her perspectives as to how this has taken place within the district. She said that she believes teachers may have respected the process more if not conducted using such a bandwagon approach. She told us that she's personally seen the forms that were completed and they were not filled out in the way an individual who is knowledgeable about the topic would have completed them. Many teachers and students, on the other hand, have taken the time to completely read through the books and understand what was going on in the plot, as well as what the author meant by the topics within the book. Additionally, she attended the school board meeting on October 19th, where she witnessed students stand up and speak about the opposition to certain materials that certain board members had been attacking. She says that she was impressed by her courage to stand in front of the board, teachers, and parents, and other individuals in order to express her opinion and fight for this topic. In regards to how she has felt in her roles since the onset of the bans, we felt these quotes best summarized her experiences. The librarian shared that district librarians have banded together because they felt attacked and threatened by the local community that seems to want to deem them pedophiles and pornography distributors. She also stated that she was faced with the reality that radical individuals could threaten her job and target her for what she represents. While it is disheartening to hear about the challenges in her role, we were thankful for her key insights in this issue. This topic continues to circulate controversy in the media, demonstrated by the press and the responses given by Missouri State Senator Bill Eigel. The following video contained traction in the media and on platform X.
The threat, I think, that's going on here is the fact that the folks on the left of the political spectrum have taken this as an opportunity to spread a lie that, quite frankly, went around the world and got global attention in the scope of the lie. And the lie was that we were burning books or burning materials that was somehow inappropriate, and when it wasn't. And I think that was a real indictment of those individuals that were spreading this lie. The children of this state in some of the pornographic, vulgar material that has made its way into our libraries and schools was a bonfire on the governor's mansion, that I would do what's necessary and protect those kids. But I've also said that, I don't think it's going to come to something like that. When I'm the governor of this state, I'm going to go in there and start breaking down the bureaucracies in Jefferson City that are enabling this type of obscene, vulgar material from getting into the hands of children in the first place.
This conservative fundraiser showcased the use of a flamethrower and was misunderstood to be a book burning due to it being such a relevant issue in St. Charles County. Bill Eigel is from St. Charles and is running for Missouri governor in 2024. He responded to this controversy with the following quote, "But let's be clear, you bring those woke, pornographic books to Missouri schools to try and brainwash our kids, and I'll burn those too, on the front lawn of the governor's mansion." This response made Eigel's stance on the book bans in Wentzville and in other districts in the United States very clear. We met with two teachers in the Wentzville School District to gather their opinions and experiences on the topic. Hi, I'm here with Katie Rosner. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Like you said, I'm Katie Rosner. I teach high school science in the Wentzville School District in Missouri.
All right. So first I want to kind of just ask you about your stance on book bans. I know that you are passionate about it.
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about book banning. I feel like in the year 2023, we should not be talking about banning books. I just think that it's a very personal decision, and I totally support parents who want to regulate like what their kids are reading or what their kids are having access to. But I don't think it's okay for a small group of parents to regulate what all kids have access to. I really do trust in the expertise and the professionalism of other teachers, especially like librarians and English teachers and those that are like, assigning books or reading books at my level for high school. Like there's the AP reading list. I have complete faith in the people that have curated those lists that have actual degrees in education, years of experience, background, all of that. But just as a citizen, I just think it's a really slippery slope that we're talking about banning books in public schools that have been curated, that have been evaluated and looked at and deemed to be acceptable. And I can validate parents or people thinking that some of the content is inappropriate. And if you're looking at like, a freshman that's maybe 13, that could be. But we also have to keep in mind that there are also like seniors that are 17 and 18 years old in our buildings as well. And so I know that in our building, in our district, parents can say like, I don't want my child to check out these certain books. They have that ability to put like limits on what their kid is getting access to. And those things are already in place. So I don't think that because they don't want their kids reading or having access to certain material that should like be a blanket thing. And as a parent, I want my kids to have access to anything they want to read. And that might be scary to some parents, but I want my kids to maybe have some questions or to be uncertain about things and to ask, like, what does this mean? Or this didn't make me feel good when I read about this event that happened in history. Was that true? Was that, did that really happen? Or, was this just fiction? Or this situation happened and people were treated poorly and I don't feel okay about it. And it made me really mad. Like I want my kids to experience some of those things that maybe are uncomfortable to them, that I might not give them exposure to just in my general everyday parenting. So I'm very passionate that banning books is not something we should be spending a lot of resources or time or energy on. I just think there's bigger problems in public education that we need to fix, and banning books is not one of them, and it's not going to get us where we need to be.
Do the parents kind of shape what books are banned in your district?
Yes. Parents shape a lot. They can challenge whether or not a book is in our collection. And then there's a whole process that goes through, whether or not we would pull that book. Some administrators in our district don't want to even deal with it. So they're just like telling their librarians to go ahead and pull those books just so to like make it easier on everybody. But again, I think that's kind of giving power to the wrong thing. That's why we have these policies and procedures in place. And so to not abide by those, I think is dangerous to do.
What kind of resources does it take to ban books? Does it take a lot of extra time?
So on the side of our district, yes. So I teach science, so I don't really have like a direct correlation with any like books, and I don't have to worry about like anything that I have assigned for reading being banned or whatever. I just know from listening regularly to our board meetings and having professional conversations with people in my building that do teach things like ELA subjects or our librarians, things like that, are just the extra work that they've had to do. So when a book gets challenged, I believe they get pulled temporarily from the shelves. And then it goes through this process where it's a committee that has to meet. And so some of that is like, I think there's a board member on the committee, there's some teachers on the committee, there's parents, and there are central office staff. So you have to find a time for all of those people to get together, right? And then if you're talking about like the teacher and the parent and the central office staff, like you're pulling them from doing other work that they should be doing to have these meetings, to read the book, and then be able to meet about it and discuss if it meets whatever criteria is in that procedure of what would ban a book. And I just know that for the most part, like our librarians do such a great job of getting, checking sources and having like they have like different groups and websites and ratings that they use to like choose books for the library. And so they kind of already make sure that they've cross-referenced that it's appropriate and that it's relevant and it meets some sort of a group of students, whether that be their ethnicity, a religion, likes and interests, hobbies, that kind of thing. So that they have a well-rounded collection of books that kind of represents all students in our buildings. And so it's like that work has already been done to make sure that it's not, just an inappropriate, raunchy book. It's that there's, not those types of things in our library. And maybe there's a passage or maybe there's a, situation or whatever that gets a little racy, in a book. But if you read a lot, that's not usually the whole book. Like it's like one little passage or whatever. So, but it's scary that we're gonna control books, but they have access to so much more that isn't curated and that nobody's kind of overlooking with like social media and all that stuff. That it's like, again, we're just spending a lot of resources trying to ban books, but all the other stuff, it just blows my mind that that's what we're going to attack and say that it's inappropriate.
Have you seen anything that different Missouri legislators have posted about their stance on banning books, specifically the videos or the tweets of the senator that we were talking about earlier?
Yeah. And so when people that are in elected offices that are kind of like, our leaders are saying things like, I will burn the books and I will go to the schools and I will burn the books. I with all due respect, I think that it just shows a lack of education of those people of like, I can't have a good conversation with this or an open-minded conversation about this with people that again have experience and education and background in this. So we're just gonna like shut it all off and I'll burn it so nobody can have it. And I just think that it's kind of such an immature response. And what it does when you say like you're going to do something really kind of like violent like that, I feel like it incites like this mass riot like mentality of we all have to just like, get our pitchforks and we're going to go burn down the things. And I don't get that mentality that's your go-to response of how to deal with the situation. And I think it's really scary that those are, again, our leaders are, the people making our decisions about everything in our state. And that's their response. Like, I think that there should be mediation if you have groups that disagree. I think that, you should have those meaningful conversations of what value are these books bringing, or like, let's look at research and data. It's kind of like 20 years ago, they were, people, there was all these studies out, or claims, I should say. They were claims that, kids that watched video games became mass murderers. Well, like there would be millions of mass murderers because millions of kids are playing video games. So that claim was made and people make all these assumptions, but there isn't any evidence to back that up. There's no, like, let's have a real conversation here about what's going on and track the data. Like, are the people committing these crimes avid video game players? No. Are the people that are doing bad things like rape or abuse, or I don't even know what bad things that these groups think that books are going to do. Like, are they really reading Colleen Hoover books? Like, I don't understand the association with these, like what these books are going to do. And so in the end, all I kind of keep coming back to is just like, we're super scared of people that aren't like us. And I just don't think that's a good look for leaders and politicians. There's all these negative messages to kids who I think already have like all these crazy emotions going on, and these crazy messages that they're feeding themselves in their brains. Bad message to be sending. But when leaders and politicians are the ones saying it, like, what's a kid supposed to do? Like, that's who they're supposed to trust.
Do all teachers kind of seem to feel the same way? Or are there a lot of outliers, divided?
I think it's probably divided. I think that there's a lot of teachers. Um, it's funny. I don't want to out anybody, but that just don't read a lot. I know, like, I have a bunch of friends that I work directly with, and we always joke that we just need to have a book club, because they'll say like, "Oh, I'm reading this," and we talk a lot about it at lunch. And then even this summer, a bunch of us brought in to one of the workrooms like a lot of old books that we had, and and we're pretty avid readers and read all over. And so like we're always kind of talking about books and like what we feel about book banning. But then I think that there's just a lot of people that just don't read, and that's fine. Like, that's fine. That's personal choice, right? And so I think that they're kind of indifferent on it. I think that the English teachers just feel kind of beat down because I think there's, and I could be wrong, but I feel like there's been this turn in English language art education that instead of forcing every kid to read, 7 designated novels through a year, it's a little bit more organic, where like they just want kids reading. So pick a book that is interesting to you and like, let's read it and let's find some themes that are common in this genre of book or whatever. So I do think it's definitely split. I do think that a lot of people are just indifferent. I just know that I've read hundreds of books about all different things, all types of characters. I read a lot of YA, like young adult stuff, just so I can have things to talk about when I see students reading certain books. I like to read the banned books to see what all the fuss is about, and it's never made me want to go make some life altering change of like who I am, or it just kind of opens my mind, because I feel like I've kind of grown up in a pretty vanilla pudding community. And so I like being exposed to things that I wouldn't have thought of or known about otherwise. So that's really what I want for my students and for people in general.
Is there anything that you can do, or like any action that people can take against banned books? If there
I'm
is?
not sure, like, I know in our district, like, you can sign up to talk. I mean, you can buy your kids books, you can join a library. I know one of our things coming up here is that like they really want to get rid of all the books that are targeting certain groups of kids, but they want them to be like directly related to like a standard or a specific objective in our curriculums, instead of just being like a place for kids to go and read books. I think that if you like, everyone just needs to be super involved in their board of educations or their kids school districts. So, and just trust teachers, like so much experience in education, like they're doing good things. I'm not trying to brainwash anybody. I just want them to like not throw my lab supplies and put their names on their papers.
Right. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Welcome. You're welcome. Good luck to all the future teachers out there.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Tarrant Oliphant. I have been an English teacher for 29 years. I taught my first 10 years at McClure High School, my second 10 years at Frontier Middle School, and for the past 9 years, including this year, I've been teaching English at Liberty High School in the Wentzville School District.
How have book bans affected your classroom or the school environment?
In terms of my own individual classroom, I have to say that I've been very fortunate in that book bans have not severely impacted my classroom. I have taught books such as Of Mice and Men, To Kill a Mockingbird, Romeo and Juliet, Catcher in the Rye, The Great Gatsby, Wuthering Heights, Oedipus, Macbeth, Invisible Man, The Things They Carried, Animal Farm. Some of these books have been banned by other districts in the past. Fortunately, in my case, I have not had a problem district-wide with these books being banned. In the past, I have had some individual parents have concerns. At one point, I had a mother concerned that I was teaching Macbeth to her daughter because she had concerns about witches being in the play and was concerned about any religious implications. But after talking through the play with the mom, this was in an advanced junior class at McClure High School, the mom did let me go ahead and teach Macbeth with her daughter in class, and we didn't have any issues whatsoever. I have had one more incident with a parent who was concerned teaching To Kill a Mockingbird. This parent was an African-American parent who was concerned about the racial overtones and undertones within the course of the book, the racial slurs that are used in the book. And in talking to the mother about the book and about my approach with the book and what I would do to make sure that her daughter felt comfortable in class, the mother did allow me to teach To Kill a Mockingbird in class. So I have had 2 incidents where parents have had some issues about the books individually. It wasn't a nationwide or even a district-wide ban. And I was able to work those issues out through conversation and relationships with the parents.
How have students reacted to or been affected by books being banned?
I think that in terms of at the high school level, the students are affected in that they are eager to research books that are banned, eager to get my thoughts and opinions on books that are banned. Like, for instance, in the Wentzville School District, The Bluest Eye was banned for a while, and the kids wanted to know my opinion. And my opinion is very unwavering on literature and books. I think that parents do have a right and an obligation with their own child that if there's a book that they feel very strongly about their child not reading, that they're allowed to express that opinion for their own individual child. But to ban certain books for all children in a sweeping manner, I think is censorship, and I have very strong feelings against censorship. If I don't want my child to read a book, then I think that as a parent that I could have the autonomy to ask for a separate assignment, but I don't think that I should dictate that separate assignment to everybody. So I guess my answer is twofold. Kids are curious, they have lots of questions, and they want to know how I feel about it. And in the end, I feel that book banning is wrong on every level that it could be wrong.
What, if any, topics do you think should be banned from schools?
I don't necessarily know that I think that topics should be banned from schools. I think that you as a teacher have a responsibility to make your students not only feel comfortable and safe, but sometimes in challenging their ability to think, you make them uncomfortable, because when you grow, even physically, it's uncomfortable. You have growing pains. And I think that those pains can be mental and social and emotional sometimes when there's growth. So it's not necessarily that I think topics should be banned, but I think that there should be care, professionalism, and real pedagogy to back up why you're teaching what you're teaching and how it can significantly help or impact a child. I think that as a teacher, you have a responsibility not to let your own personal political ideology, your own personal opinions cloud, what you're teaching or how you're teaching something. To try to remain neutral when you're teaching your students is a really important thing, so you can give them the opportunity to form their own opinions. Should things be banned? No. If kids are, going to approach you about topics, I think that there's a way that you could sensitively broach any subject that a kid wants to give and throw your way. I think that your job, though, as a teacher, is to make sure that things are always appropriate for school.
Do you feel that statewide or district bans have more impact on your school?
I think they will. Fortunately, I'm in my 29th year, and I also teach the AP curriculum. And AP College Board has been extremely vocal about the fact that they will not allow districts to mandate what can and can't be taught. So even though Wentzville banned The Bluest Eye, and there was a point where I really considered teaching The Bluest Eye, it was not a book that I had previously had in my syllabus. And so I didn't end up teaching that, but AP curriculum is not, at least at this point, touchable. In terms of what I teach currently, approved by the Wentzville School District, I feel like there's been a lot of bluster, but in terms of in the ELA classroom, in the English classroom, I don't feel like I've had a lot of repercussions occur in terms of the tone and tenor of a minority of people within our district that are trying to take some options away from students. I think our librarians, though, have seen a whole nother side of that. And they've tried to get books taken away from the library catalog. And that, to me, is utterly reprehensible. That does affect my students. It affects my kids when we're taking away books like Mouse, when we're accusing librarians of, we had people accused of distributing pornography just because there were like art books and there was nudity in the art books. Those kinds of things are a deterrent to free thinking, to learning, to open expression. I don't want somebody censoring what my kid can or can't read from the school district. My kid wants to read a book, I want him to read a book, period. Especially a book found in the public library at school. That is a place where kids can really foster a love for learning, and books that curtail to their own individual passions and really develop not only a love for reading, but a lifelong love for reading and a lifelong relationship with a library.
You've touched on this a bit, but what specific bans do you feel strongest about? Any specific books or topics?
I think that, of course, books dealing with LGBTQ plus bans are reprehensible. I think that taking that literature away from a population that's really traditionally vulnerable, and that representation is really important as a way to sustain a feeling of belonging and mental health, and to take that reading away from not only those kids, but from other kids who maybe don't fall in anywhere in particular within that label of LGBTQ plus. However, they have friends or loved ones who fall in that label, and reading fosters empathy and understanding. And now they don't, get that because it has been taken out of our library. It's bigotry at its most deplorable. And I feel the same thing with a book like The Bluest Eye, where we take away a book that admittedly has some sexually explicit parts in it, but that's a part of the whole. There are messages in that book that are bigger. The ultimate harm from banning books is creating a society that can't think for themselves independently. That's the harm. When you can't, when you ban books, you're taking away opportunities for learning, for growth, to create empathy, to expand your, social, emotional, intellectual horizons. banning books is a scourge on a free thinking democracy. You don't do that in a free thinking democracy. You cannot stand by while people are talking about taking away opportunities for you to learn and for you to think and for you to grow as a person. You have to stand up, you have to say it's wrong, and you have to fight. And that is why I want my name to be on this video, I want my face to be on this video, and I want people to know that I am a well-respected, non-indoctrinating teacher in the Wentzville School District who thoroughly believes that students should be allowed choices in terms of reading.
Thank you so much for watching our video. Please fill out the Qualtrics form that we have linked in the description.